this video is about creating a full text search feature for a view and searching a database table. To get started, start my terminal. This is Windows 11, but I'm going to use Windows Subsystem for Linux. Always make sure that you are in your Linux file system, not on your Windows one. And then first I'm going to start with a skeleton that's I've created before, because I don't want to necessarily configure Cake and everything and write a heap of migrations. So this one's just going to clone this project and then open it in VSCode. Now when you open it within a Windows Subsystem for Linux prompt, it connects you into your Windows Subsystem for Linux. You might need to install some extensions and those sorts of things, these sorts of extensions in VSCode to be able to do this, but it's not sort of a subject to this video. So we've got our Cake skeleton. The reason, as I said, I'm using it is that I already have a migration written to create a post table with body and title string columns and a users table, but we're not going to be looking at that today. So the first thing you do when you've installed a Cake skeleton or Cake itself is you run composer install, and you also need to, once you've done that, it creates an app local, and you need to configure a data source, the default data source. Now generally you might use MySQL, but for this I'm going to use SQLite. So I'll create a DB directory, and then if we go down to our test database, I'll just copy that and come back up to here and enter, just make a change here so that my live, and we call it live, and once we've done that we can run our migration. So as I said, the migration is this, creating a migration using this migration I've already created. Now I'm seeing a problem here. We've got squiggly lines underneath this, so I'm just going to look and make sure that we do have that. So let's see if we can reload the window and if that's going to change. Okay, that's good. So we just had to reload the window and now it's picked up the that change. So running our migrations, we need to run bin cake. In this particular case, for some reason, cake's not executable, so I just change that, and then I type in migrations, migrate. Now what that's done, if you have a look in the DB directory, you now have an SQLite database file there, and that tells you that it's successful along with the green as well. Now we need some sample data, and so to do that we're going to be running our database seeds. This particular skeleton has 2 user accounts. As you can see, one's named admin with a password of 123 and the other one's user with a password of 123, and they've got their own permissions and those sorts of things, but we're not going to be using that. I'm just going to hard code the IDs as well so that I know exactly what they're going to be. This particular migration truncates the table, so it completely removes any data before it inserts that information. So here we have our PostsSeed, and to do this tutorial I'd need more than just these 4 or 5 things. It'd be nice to have a bit more information to work on. So I'm going to use PHP Faker, and we just, oops, got a little bit ahead of myself there. We just need to go up and copy and paste that in there, and to use it you simply use that and go up to your PostsSeed. Now as you can see, again, squiggly line means it's not seen, so sometimes the easiest thing to do is just Control-Shift-P and then choose Reload Window. You might have to type it in to get it there, but you can now see that it's being seen by the IntelliFence. Now here we'd like to just add a bunch of records, and the records we can just use, so we can say okay, add to that data array that we already have, and we're going to go Faker, and we're going to go sentence, and we want we could do that. The other option we can do is Faker, I think it's random digit, or we can do random element, and I could say okay, I want 1, 2 or 3 there, and we want to say Faker want paragraphs. Again, sometimes we're going to want, let's say 1 or 2 paragraphs. Now here we want to just apply, just make the admin the owner of all those so we don't get confused about who owns what. And this, I believe, is going to return an array if we don't specify a string. So going in here and putting in true, we'll say I want that as a string, which will stop an error message when we go to do the migration. So all we've done is adding to this data array that's already there. We're just going to add some random information. So we go in Cake migrations. Now seed is what we want, and it's just going to automatically run all this database seeds. And what does that mean? Well, let's create a new terminal. When we go into bin cake server and start the server and open this, we might need to, we're already logged in apparently. So let's admin 1, 2, 3. So let's try that again, because that was from an old installation. It's still got old information there. But what we can see, we have randomly selected sentence with a couple of words in it, and random 1, 2 or 3 paragraphs of text that we'll use to search upon. Now first things first, we have this really annoying thing here. So I'm just going to say, go into my templates, go into my layout, choose the default, and let's go into our body and add a class of notranslate, and hopefully when we reload and we go to another, it's going to pick it up as, yep, so now that's stopped Google Chrome from automatically offering to translate our Latin into English. Next step is, what we're going to do is we're going to put a form on the page, and then we're going to use that form to search our string fields. So we're not going to look at dates, user IDs, or the database IDs, but we're just going to look at string, because that's generally what you'll be doing, but we're just going to automate that a little bit behind the scenes so we don't have to manually specify fields and those sorts of things. To give ourselves space, let's go to our index page, which is the post index page. So that's this page that we can see here is the index page. And I'm going to steal from my view here, and this information here, and go to here, and we've got a heading here. I might just call this search, and believe that we just need to now add, I think it's going to be two divs, and we need to just use the so let's see what that's created and see if it looks okay. Alright, now it'd be nice if that was also had a, let's see if we can pop that, let's see if that's going to give us what we want. Right. Let's see if that will give us just a nice, that's better. Okay, so let's first fill out, create a form, and this is going to be a contextless form, meaning that we're not going to pre-feed it with any values. This requires that we have, it's going to post to a specific action that we're going to create. Search is the action, and we also want to create a control, and we're going to call that name, the field name is search as well. We require a submit button. I'm going to say that's the search button. And finally, when we want to close the form, we need to type in end to get our form close tag. And just format that so it looks nice. Let's have a look at it. So that looks redundant, doesn't it? So we might just remove that, and it should just look, yeah. So now let's hit a search, and notice that what we're missing, it's posting to this search action, which is missing. Let's remove all PostsController and go up the top and add public function named search. Now this is going to take post data, which we can get hold of using the getData method on request. And what we need to do with this is, if we just look at what we're getting when we go back to our search form, let's say for instance we enter this search value with some spaces and those sorts of things. We're going to have this, and then it's going to query for $, and spaces. So there's two things we want to do. We want to trim these values so it's just the text we entered. If there's any spaces, we don't want them. And then if it's empty, we don't want this to be populated at all. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that by, first of all, we said we need to trim. So if someone just puts, someone just enters blank strings, we want to trim it. So trim like that. And then also, if they enter nothing, we want to filter that array. So let's have a look at that now. And if we go back, and we've got that same value. Now notice what it's done, and if we enter nothing, it will be an empty array. So that's what we need to do in order to tidy up our submitted information from the form. Next step is we need to craft a URL which we are going to redirect to. So the URL we want to go back to is, we want to go back to an index action which we were going to filter using the search value. So that requires that we have the action specified. We can, if it was another controller you were submitting to, you'd specify controller like such, but we don't need to specify that normally as this. And then we just say, okay, that is what we need. So once we've got that constructed, we just return a redirect to that URL. And now how does that look? Well, if we go test and we go search, we now see that it's redirected to our index page with the value appended as a query string. So now what do we need to do in order to get our full text search of all string columns of this post table and get it to display and filter? Now with this you could specify, you can manually say, okay, I want my conditions to be, okay, I know we've got a title, and I know we've got a title. I want to specify that, and I want a search value here, and I want to wrap it in percents. And I could say, okay, I want to search, and it's going to be all condition. And you could do this, and you could say all body, like, and again. Now that would be perfectly acceptable to do. So you want to say, so get your search value from this request, get the query. Now that can be the individual search field, and you could then say, okay, in my pagination settings, I can just do that and it would work. Let's go. So it works, doesn't it? So you could simply just manually decide, okay, I can build my conditions here. There's no issues with, it's simple. I'm doing an OR condition. I want to look for anything that's the titles like the search value, the bodies like the search value again, and that works perfectly well. So that's your basic simplified thing. You could add, obviously, you could create multiple fields and then craft it like this manually, but there is another way we can grab these fields, and it might translate well to when you've got big tables and you don't want to just type that all in. And the way to do that is, so we're going to go conditions, and what we're going to do is we're going to go, okay, I want to create a collection. This is one of those handy methods that's globally available in Cake. I want to create a collection of the posts table getSchema of all the columns. Okay, now what does that look like? It gives you like a collection. You need to convert it to an array, but it will give you this list of fields in the post table, and that's good, but we don't want to search on ID, we don't want to search on created or modified because they're dates, and we're not entering dates to search on, we're actually just looking for text. So all we're looking for is this body and title fields. So then we need to filter down this collection, and we're going to take the column and we're going to get, again, we're going to go get posts, get the schema object, and get the column, and this time it takes the column name, and we're wanting to filter, so this has got to return true if we want to keep it, and these this returns this type of a schema. So I'm looking for, so it returns a column, description of the column, what type of column it is, and all I'm looking for is the string columns. So again, we just reload it and it gives us the body and title. Now if we were to look at that, I believe, I'm not sure, but I think I can just do this and just have a look at what we're getting back here. So that's the values that we're looking at that are available within this getSchema. And obviously for the first one, which is ID, it's going to be an integer, and we're saying, well, I don't want integers, I want strings. So we're filtered down by that. The next thing we want to do is we want to say, okay, I've got the columns that I want. Now I want to build a query that looks very similar to this. So how do we do that? Well, we can do a map and say, okay, I want to take again the column and this time I want to return, and what I'm trying to build is really I want the column like this. I want to say I want it like, and then I want that, and let's just copy it, make it easier. And that's what I'm trying to build, and I need to sort of pass in the actual search term here so that it's available to the inner function. But this is what we'll be getting with that, which is not quite what we want. We really want these to be in the same array, so we can change this to reduce, and reduce has an accumulator, so we're going to put accumulator there. We're going to give it an initial value, which is an array, and then we're going to say, okay, I want you to take each one of these and whatever's in the accumulator currently and merge this into it. So again, we then have if we just remove this, because now it's the reduce function is returning an array, not a collection. So now we have this, which is exactly what we want, but we also now need to change this slightly so that we also say, okay, we want it to be an OR condition. So we can just do that like that. So we're trying to aim for this, and we get it now with created by this automatic code here. So this could be, if you've got 15 or 20 string columns, you definitely want to do something like this, not manually specify them all. So at that point, now we can just have a look at how this is working, and we can go back and do a search, and we've got the word test, but there's no tests there. Let's hit search again, and type in admin, and let's type in user. So I've got some of those, and then one of those Latin words that they have, and then we maybe enter a Latin word with an extra space, but we can see that it's doing the job. Now notice what's a challenge here. We know that the search value up the top here is being passed to the action, and that's working well, but we don't know what we've just searched for. So that's a challenge that we have. So we need to go back to our index page and make a change to our form, and this is really helpful. Value sources. So we're saying for the form, can you please take your value sources from the query string or from the context? Now, as you can see with this form, the form is, the first argument is the context, and the context null. So we're not taking the value from the context, so I can just comment that out and make it formatted. But we are going to take the values from query. So going back to our form here, if I type in something and we've got $, in the query string, now it's appearing in the search field. Now that's okay, and it's pretty obvious that yes, the searching by that, and we can go into here and delete and then search, and that really is all you need. So you can put in a search value, and that really does the job quite well. And so at that point you really have completed the form, and it works quite well, and it shows you what it's filtering on and those sorts of things. But just one more step we could take is that sometimes you might want to create a, and you normally would do this with you'd make a reset so you'd make a button and you'd call it clear form, and the type is a reset. This is what you'd normally do with a HTML form. And when you did that and added that, you would hit, say you would do a search. I'll get something that's got some value. And then you would hit clear, and that should normally clear the form, but it's not. So now we're at a point where, okay, how do I make this a little bit more automated? And to do that, takes a snippet of JQuery or JavaScript code. Now, the reset button is not what we want. We just want a button, because we're not going to be using the normal default reset functionality. So here we need to go composer, require, and we're looking for components JQuery. And it's kind of simple, but all we do is go into our vendor directory, composer, and then we take, we don't need to use the non-minified version, we just copy that from the components JQuery directory into, and we might already know, we just have to go paste, and we put that into our JavaScript directory. And now what we want to do is we want to say, okay, I want to specify for the index page that this HTML script, I want jQuery.min. Notice we don't include the .js. And if we go echo and we reload, what we'll find is that we go into our HTML and we'll find that it's actually echoed into the body of the, but we'd prefer to have it up at the head, or sometimes you might like to load it underneath the footer at the end of the body or something like that. So there's a number of different ways to achieve that. You can say here, okay, block, and we're going to call it just the default script block. Let's see what happens when we reload. And now we can see the default script block is right here, which that equates to, if you go into your layout, so have a look at your layout, your default layout, it's saying, okay, fetch that script block here at this point here in the layout. So you can see it's in the head, and that does that. Another way you can do it is at the end of your body, you can go, you can call it virtually whatever you want, but you can say script fetch the view block, and we go here now and we say okay, and reload, and as you can see now, it's now at the bottom of your body. So that makes it really easy to insert the script. Now, what are we going to do now to get this to clear this form, so that we can then clear the form and search without deleting doing this sort of thing. We can do that by creating another JavaScript file. So we're going to call that JavaScript file reset form. And notice how we've just put it in an array there, so it's going to search for that JavaScript file in the same place it has. So we go reset form.js, and we're using JQuery, so we're using the shorthand version, which is, so this is another way of saying document on load. When the document is fully loaded, do this. Before we do that, we just want to make sure that we remember what ID we're going to attach to. So we're saying when we see this input, attach a click event to it, and then specify that the form is the closest form to that button. And then using the form, we want to find each text input, and for each one we want to grab, now there's a couple of arguments that go to this. The element is passed second, which I've discovered recently. So we want to say element.value is nothing. So just to see that happening, we'll just go element.value, and alright. So now this should do exactly what we need it to do. Let's just first of all reload and have a look at our scripts at the bottom of the page there. We can put them in the head if we specify the script block in the head. But what do we get when we do this? Well, we've got admin in this field, and we hit clear, and then that simply removes it, and then when our search goes again, it's really really simple like that. Now there's certain things you have to look out for. I believe if you take the value from context and you're specifying context here, this JQuery code can be difficult to delete. So we search on that. It works now, but I have found that when I'm using context that I cannot clear these fields successfully because the context is somehow sort of dictating that needs to stay the way it is. And the only way I've found to do that is use this, which set the timeout and just give ourselves 100 milliseconds, and what that then does is you then hit clear, and it refills the field with whatever it thinks is in context, or those sorts of things, and then it just waits that fraction of a second till the page has done what it's going to do, and then it clears the field. Just a gotcha that I found, that you might not ever get that problem. Okay, so that is a view of doing a search on a database, all the string fields, and putting together, if we have a look in debug kit, let's have a look in there. So we go search and have a look at the SQL, putting together a query that is paginated and that's looking for the search value in all the string fields. I hope you get some use out of this.